I want you to try something for me. It'll only take a second. Think about the last time someone really convinced you to do something. Maybe against your better judgment.
Oh, I think we all have a few of those.
Maybe they sold you a gadget you knew you didn't need, or got you to sign up for something you didn't want, or, maybe you just trusted their gut instinct on a massive, expensive decision. You got that person in your head.
I think everyone has at least one person like that in their past. Or maybe 5.
Okay, now, I want you to be brutally honest with yourself. Was that person attractive?
It's an uncomfortable question, isn't it? We like to view ourselves as these rational data processors.
Of course.
We think we weigh the pros and cons, look at the specs, check the spreadsheets, and then make a logical choice. But the research we're looking at today suggests the reality is much, much simpler. And honestly, a lot more primal.
And that's what we're tackling today. We are exploring the halo effect. And I don't want to spoil the ending, but there is a very decent chance that physical appearance is pulling the strings on your life more than you realize.
It's like we're being manipulated by our own evolution every single day.
And the scary part, we usually thank the people doing the manipulating. We feel good about it while it's happening.
We do.
So we've got a stack of sources here, everything from case studies on, high-profile corporate fraud to psychological research from the 70s, right up to evolutionary biology. What is the actual mission here? Because Pretty People Have It Easier feels like something we all intuitively know.
It does. It feels a bit like saying water is wet.
Right.
True, but we need to go beyond the intuition. Water is wet doesn't explain fluid dynamics. The goal of this deep dive is to understand the mechanism. We need to see why this feature of our evolutionary history, this shortcut our brains take, has become a massive bug in the modern world.
And crucially, how to stop letting it control our decisions.
Exactly. How to patch the software.
Let's start with the ultimate modern parable for this. The story that I think really ripped the mask off this whole phenomenon, Elizabeth Holmes.
It is the perfect case study. It's almost too perfect. If you wrote it as fiction, people would say it was unrealistic.
Right. For anyone who managed to avoid the news for the last decade, back in the early 2010s, Elizabeth Holmes convinced some of the smartest, wealthiest, most cynical people on the planet to give her billions of dollars.
And we're not talking about easily scammed grandmas here.
No, we're talking seasoned venture capitalists, former secretaries of state like George Shultz and Henry Kissinger.
People whose entire career depends on spotting nonsense.
Yeah.
These are people who pride themselves on being unscammable.
Exactly. And she promised them the Theranos machine, a magic box that could run hundreds of medical tests from a single drop of blood. And the thing is, the technology didn't work.
It wasn't even close to working. It was pure science fiction.
But she raised over $700 million. She was on the cover of Fortune, Forbes, Inc. She was meeting with presidents. And for years, nobody in that inner circle really called her out. The question is, why? How did she short-circuit the skepticism of the world's elite?
Because she fit the pattern. This is where the psychology kicks in. When investors looked at her, they didn't see a 19-year-old dropout with a non-functional prototype.
What did they see?
They saw a visionary.
It was the aesthetic, right? The black turtlenecks.
The Steve Jobs aesthetic, absolutely.
Yeah.
But it was also her youth, her intensity, those large, unblinking eyes, even that surprisingly deep voice she affected. She curated a visual and auditory package that our brains just associate with genius.
Which is deeply ironic when you say it out loud. Wearing a black turtleneck doesn't make you a genius any more than wearing a lab coat makes me a doctor.
Of course not.
But you're saying in that room, in the heat of the pitch, the investors' brains weren't making that distinction.
Not the unconscious parts of their brains, no. Holmes utilized these visual cues to bypass the critical thinking centers of these investors. She looked the part, so they assumed she had the competence to back it up.
They filled in the blanks.
They filled in the blanks. They thought, she looks like the next Steve Jobs, therefore she must be the next Steve Jobs.
And that, right there, that is the core definition of the halo effect.
Spot on. The halo effect is a specific type of cognitive bias. It describes a phenomenon where, when we see one positive trait in a person like physical attractiveness or a charismatic presentation, it creates a halo, a glow that extends to everything else about them.
So it's a spillover effect. Because she's striking and charismatic, I assume she's also honest, good at engineering, and fiscally responsible.
Precisely. We unconsciously assume attractive or charismatic people are smarter, more trustworthy, and more likable. We fill in the missing data with positive assumptions just because the packaging looks good.
It sounds incredibly shallow. I'd like to think that if I were sitting across from her, or anyone else, I would have asked to see the data regardless of the turtleneck.
You might have asked for data, sure,
Yeah.
but the interpretation of that data would still be colored by the halo. And the research suggests this isn't just anecdotal. There was a landmark study back in 1977. Nisbet and Wilson were the key researchers here that really proved this.
Walk us through that.
Okay, so they showed participants videotapes of a professor. In one video, the professor was warm and agreeable. In the other, the exact same guy was cold and distant. But here's the kicker.
Okay.
They also varied his physical mannerisms to be more or less appealing. Then, they asked the participants to rate these people on a whole range of traits: intelligence, success, likability, even his accent.
Let me guess. The version of him that acted warm and looked better got higher scores.
Across the board.
Yeah.
But it gets weirder. The participants who saw the likable version rated his accent as charming. The participants who saw the cold version rated the exact same accent as irritating.
Wow, so the physical impression literally changed how they heard his voice.
Yes. But here is the million-dollar twist. Did the people in the study realize they were doing this? Did they say, "Oh, I liked him, so I forgave his accent"?
I'm gonna assume not.
No. They vehemently denied it. When the researchers asked them, the participants insisted that appearance and mannerisms didn't influence their judgment of his competence at all. They genuinely believed they were making independent, objective judgments.
They weren't lying.
They weren't lying, they were just completely unaware of what their own brains were doing.
So it's happening in the background. It's like a background app draining your battery without you knowing.
It's the lizard brain, the amygdala, the ancient circuitry. It sees a beautiful face or a compelling presence and instantly signals, this person is safe, this person is good, this person has value. Your conscious mind, the part of you that thinks it's rational, just plays catch-up.
It creates a narrative to justify the feeling you already have.
That's it.
Okay, I want to pivot to the why of this. Because usually when our brains have these weird quirks, there's an evolutionary reason. Nature doesn't usually waste energy on bugs like this unless they used to be features.
Right.
Why on earth would we be wired to trust pretty people?
Yeah.
You'd think evolution would want us to judge people based on their ability to hunt or gather or fight off a tiger.
Well, you have to look at the context in which that software was written. Take yourself back about 100,000 years. You're on the African savanna.
Okay, I'm there. It's hot. No Wi-Fi.
No Wi-Fi, no hospitals, and importantly, no LinkedIn. You can't run a background check on a stranger. You encounter someone new from a different tribe. You have maybe a few seconds to decide, is this person a threat, an ally, a potential partner?
And you have zero data to go on except what you can see.
Except what you can see with your own eyes. So looks were the only resume we had.
Okay.
And back then, physical attractiveness was actually a pretty decent proxy for health and genetic fitness. It was what biologists call an honest signal.
How so? Give me an example of an honest signal on the savannah.
Okay, think about what we consider universally attractive. Clear skin. That meant you didn't have a parasitic infection or disease. Good teeth. That meant you were getting enough nutrients and weren't starving.
Okay, that makes sense. A logical shortcut.
And facial symmetry. That's the big one. Symmetry is difficult to achieve biologically. It means your development in the womb was stable, you didn't have genetic mutations, you handled environmental stress well. So if I saw someone with clear skin on the savannah, it was actually a logical deduction to think, hey, this person is a survivor, good genes, I should hang out with them.
Right, it was a heuristic. Pretty equals healthy equals good. It worked for survival.
But here's the problem. We aren't on the savannah anymore.
No. I can go to a drugstore right now and buy clear skin in a bottle. I can go to an orthodontist and buy straight teeth. I can use a filter and get Okay, let's walk through those consequences. Because the sources lay out some examples that are honestly kind of infuriating. First one, obviously, is dating.
It's where we see the halo effect most vividly. We project non-existent personality traits onto attractive partners. We see a beautiful face and we assume kindness, we assume intelligence.
And then 6 months later, you're arguing in an IKEA parking lot, realizing they're actually selfish and mean, and you're wondering, how did I miss this?
You didn't miss it, you just painted over it with the halo. You ignore the red flags because the good genes signal was so loud. But it moves beyond personal relationships. Look at the workplace.
This one hits hard for anyone who has ever been passed over for a promotion.
The data is stark. Attractive candidates are significantly more likely to be hired, even when they are less qualified than other candidates. And it doesn't stop at hiring. Once they're in the job, they often get higher performance ratings for the same work.
So the boss is looking at them through the halo, too. Oh, Brad is so charming and has such a strong jawline. He must be doing a great job, even if Brad hasn't opened Excel in a week.
It creates this feedback loop of success that has nothing to do with merit. Economists even call this the beauty premium. Attractive employees literally earn more money over their lifetimes. There was a study of CEOs that found they were disproportionately tall and fit compared to the average population. We have an image of what a leader looks like, and we hire for the look, not necessarily the skill.
But if you want to talk about really high stakes, look at the justice system. This is the part of the research that really stopped me in my tracks.
Yeah, this is where it goes from unfair to terrifying.
Because you assume the law is objective, it's supposed to be blind.
Studies consistently show that attractive defendants receive lighter sentences than unattractive defendants for the exact same crimes. There's even a baby face effect. Defendants with baby-like features are less likely to be convicted of intentional crimes.
Because jurors subconsciously think, look at him, he couldn't hurt a fly.
Right, so Lady Justice isn't actually blind. She's peeking out from under the blindfold.
She's distracted. Her brain is doing the same pattern matching yours is.
Exactly. This person looks good, they look clean-cut, so they must be good deep down. Maybe they just made a mistake. Whereas someone who is unattractive or who has rougher features doesn't get that same unconscious benefit of the doubt.
It's incredible how pervasive this is. It's in our courts, our offices, and obviously our politics. The sources mention JFK versus Nixon. That's the classic example, right?
It is the textbook case. 1960, the first televised presidential debate. Nixon had been sick, he was sweating, his suit was the wrong color for the background.
He looked pale and shifty.
He did. Kennedy looked tanned, fit, and composed.
And the famous stat is that people who listened on the radio who just heard the ideas thought Nixon won. But people who watched on TV thought Kennedy won in a landslide.
Exactly. Kennedy's attractiveness and presentation created a halo of competence that overrode the actual content of the debate for the viewers. It changed the course of history.
And now, fast forward to today. We don't just have TV, we have the influencer industry. This is basically the halo effect industrialized and monetized.
Entirely. We see an attractive person on TikTok, we follow them, we trust them, then they hold up a bag of tea detox or some crypto scheme. Because of the halo, we transfer our trust in their appearance to the product.
We think, if I buy this tea, I will be like them.
Even though they probably have a personal trainer, a private chef, and a ring light, and the key is basically laxatives.
But the lizard brain doesn't know that.
It just says, trust the pretty face.
And this brings us to what the sources call the age of exploitation. Because it feels like this isn't just accidental anymore. It feels like the world is being engineered to take advantage of this bug in our brains.
It absolutely is. We are in an era where this bias is being optimized by algorithms. Look at dating apps. The algorithms are often engineered to show you the most popular, usually the most attractive people first.
Why do they do that?
Because that boosts engagement and keeps you swiping. But it forces everyone on the app to optimize for looks above all else. It turns dating into a beauty contest, even if you're looking for a soulmate.
It trains us to be shallow.
And technology is making it harder to distinguish reality. The cameras, the filters, the editing tools, anyone can create a halo now. Some influencers don't even look like their photos in real life, but the halo effect applies to the digital avatar.
And this has a secondary effect that the notes touched on, mental health.
Right, when we see these curated, perfect, halo-inducing images, we don't just judge the influencer positively, we judge ourselves negatively. We feel inadequate because we don't have that glow, not realizing the glow is manufactured.
So we're judging others incorrectly, and we're judging ourselves harshly. It's a lose-lose situation.
It is, but I don't want to leave us in a pit of despair here.
Please don't. Tell me there is a way to turn this off. Can we patch the software?
Well, you can't turn it off. It's hardwired. But you can short-circuit it. The halo effect is powerful, but it's fragile. It is primarily a first impression bias. The research shows that in long-term relationships with friends, family, or close teams, the halo effect fades.
So once I actually get to know someone, the pretty wears off and I see the real person.
Exactly. Reality eventually pierces the halo. If an attractive person is consistently incompetent or unkind, your brain will eventually update its assessment. It just takes longer than it would for an unattractive person.
Okay, that's reassuring. But for those snap judgments, hiring, voting, buying, we need a strategy. The sources gave us a list of practical steps to rewire our approach. Let's run through them.
The first one is the most important, and we're doing it right now. Awareness.
Just knowing the trap exists.
The source implies awareness is 80% of the battle. You have to catch yourself in the act. When you meet someone attractive and you immediately think, wow, they're really smart or they seem so trustworthy, you need to have a little alarm bell go off.
And ask yourself,
do I have any evidence they are smart? Or do I just like looking at them? It's about separating the signal from the noise.
right. Step 2 is even more practical. Demand the data. Or better yet, blind the data.
Like the famous orchestra study.
Yes. Tell us about that one.
It's my favorite example. Back in the 70s and 80s, major orchestras were dominated by men. They swore they were hiring based on merit. Then they started doing blind auditions, putting up a screen so the judges could only hear the music, not see the musician.
So no halo.
No halo. They even put carpet down so the judges couldn't hear the click of high heels.
And what happened?
Suddenly, the number of women being hired skyrocketed. The halo of the male musician, or the bias against the female one, was removed, and only the data remained.
That's a powerful lesson. If you're hiring, look at the work samples blindly if you can. If you're buying a product, read the 3-star reviews. Don't just look at the influencer's smile.
Force your conscious brain to look for the boring facts. Then, step 3, slow down.
Why does speed matter?
Because the halo effect is a system 1 process. It's fast, automatic, emotional. If you could slow down, sleep on it, you engage system 2 thinking, which is slower and more rational. Never hire someone in the room. Never buy the car on the first visit. Give the halo time to dim.
And the last step involves bringing in backup.
Seek diverse perspectives. We all have different types of people we are drawn to. If you are captivated by a candidate, bring in a colleague with a different background. They might not be susceptible to that specific person's halo. They can be a reality check for your bias.
And I want to add one point for the listeners who might be sitting there thinking, well, I'm attractive, so this sounds great for me.
Right. If you are conventionally attractive, you likely have walked through some doors that were opened for you by this bias. The advice here is, don't rely on it. It's a depreciating asset.
It's a crutch.
It is. Build actual competence. Because the halo will eventually fade, and if there's nothing behind it, the fall is much harder. And if you aren't a supermodel, recognize that the people who stick around you, the ones who value you, are there for the right reasons.
That's a really healthy way to look at it.
They value your actual character, your humor, your skills. That's a much more stable foundation than a halo that fades with age.
It stops it from being a competition.
If we zoom out to the big picture, the goal here isn't to become a robot. We aren't rational machines. We are emotional, pattern-matching creatures. We like beauty. That's not a crime.
And those patterns kept us alive for a long time on the savannah. We shouldn't hate our brains for trying to help us.
Exactly. But we need to build systems in our hiring, in our courts, and in our own heads that account for our nature. We can't just trust our gut every time, because our gut is thinking about avoiding lions, not choosing a CEO or a life partner.
So what is the bottom line for the listener today if they take one thing away from this deep dive?
It's that the correlation between physical beauty and trustworthiness is 0. There is no link. Despite everything your brain is screaming at you, the packaging tells you nothing about the product.
The packaging tells you nothing about the product. I'm going to put that on a sticky note on my credit card.
It's a good mantra.
So here's my challenge to you. The next time you find yourself drawn to a celebrity or a politician or even just a charming influencer on your phone, pause just for a second and ask yourself, am I making this judgment based on actual information, or is my ancient brain just running a background script?
It's a question that might save you money, save your vote, or who knows, maybe even save your heart.
Thanks for diving in with us today. It's wild what's happening in our heads, isn't it? We'll